Okay, so I've just opened up a new scene. Let's go ahead and create a geo and rename this to magic. We're going to have, let's copy and paste that. We're going to have two particle effects going on. We're going to have magic and then some character particles. So we'll save that one for later. Let's create a pop network. Ta-da. And a sphere. This is going to be the emitter. So we're going to plug that in the first input. And you can see particles have already popped up. One important thing to note is if you scroll down here and you go to this eye, you can visualize geometry. You can change how you visualize these. So when you start having hundreds of thousands, it's probably better to view them as pixels, which is how they should come up in the renders if you set the scale right. But to make it easier to view, just keep it as points, and you can scale up the points here as well, but we'll just keep that as 3. Cool. So we'll go in here. This is the basic setup that you will see. You can actually just delete that. This is the emitter that we just wired in. Let's go back out. We'll do a null, so that if we change anything, it's still plugged in correctly. Press C to open up the colour tab. I always like to make it black. And we'll just call it emitter out. And put the viewer there. So that's the emitter, that's what controls it. You can play with some of these later. This is where most of the stuff happens with the initial controls. So in your source, you can change how you want it to be generated. But for this, we're just going to keep it onto scatter onto surfaces. We're going to birth. You've got these various things. So one important one, turn off the guide, is the life expectancy. So this is measured in seconds. Right now, each particle will last, their life will be 100 seconds. So if we change this to 2, then it will last for 2 seconds. I've got my frame rate set at 25, so that means it will be 50 frames and then they'll start disappearing. As you can see, there isn't an increase anymore of particles, whereas back here, it will increase. That's because they're dying at frame 50. So, impulse activation and constant activation. So, both of these, if they're at 1, it means they're turned on. If they're at 0, it means they're turned off. We don't want a constant activation. We want impulse activation. And we're going to do a bit of coding in here. We're going to put $FF space equals 1. And then in here, we're going to put, let's go with 10,000. So what this means is if it's at frame 1, 10,000 particles are going to be generated. After that, no more particles are generated. If we were to disable this and put this at 1 and have 5,000, like you saw, it would constantly generate particles at the same rate. But for this, we just want it to generate one load of particles right at the start. So next we want to make the particles move. I think first we need to add in the character, so we know what we're actually moving. I've got mine already selected here. This is just a character off Mixamo with some wibbly motion capture on it. But you can use anything off Mixamo with some animation imported straight from there. So here it is. We'll press space and F to frame it, and as you can see, it's massive. We've got the emitter all the way down there. So let's just scale this down to, yeah, 0.15. It's still big. Let's add in another naught. Ooh. That'll do. Doesn't have to be perfect. So now we have this as a reference. We're gonna get this emitter behind this character so it looks like the particles are coming from this. So let's go into here, and this is why we've got this null. Let's add in a transform node. So now we are going to edit the emitter. You get the handles out, press T. We can move it around. That's cool. Let's set up a camera. If you press this padlock here, it will lock the view and you can just move the camera around to where you want it. So we'll do something like that. Unlock it again. So that's that camera. Move that over there. Sorry, we go to the emitter. So back to transform. We've got, get this behind here. Actually, I know this moves backwards to about there. Okay. So once you've got it in the right place, we want to scale it down. Yep. And then that should be good to go. So it will start from there. So one thing I've realised is I set the lifespan to 5 seconds and 250 frames is in fact 10 seconds. So we'll go ahead and change that. Refresh sim. Cool. So it lasts as long as the thing. Right, let's get this moving. So let's add in a pop attract. I've already got mine there. And let's just go ahead and animate this. So holding Alt and left mouse button, we can set a keyframe. Have that start there. Frame 50. Let's start it. Let's start it at frame 50. We'll go here. And you can toggle this key button down here, which will automatically assign a keyframe when you make a change. So then we'll go to 100, and we will move it there, and then we'll go 150. We'll move it down 200. Let's bring it forward a bit. And then 250. Let's just go 2, 3 there. We'll see how that looks. Whee! So obviously this is flying off, which we don't want. And let's actually increase this to 10. There we go, that follows that. It goes wibbly, but that follows that a lot better. So for scale just controls how strongly it will follow the point. So we've got that going. Then let's add in a pop wind to get a bit of variation in there. So we want to make this, let's just try one for now. See what that does to it. So as you can see, it's toggled this real time on as well. It's made it a lot more distorted, but I think we need to lower this now because it's too strong. So basically, just tweak these settings until you get something you like. I think that looks quite cool actually. Something like that. We can revert this back to normal. Cool. So to finish off inside this part of the tree, let's add in a pop colour. There it is. And you can make this whatever colour you want. Let's go with pink for now. Cool, and you can set ramps if you want to, and you know, set it so it's dependent upon the age, but that's not relevant as it's just one load of particles. So cool, so we've got a pop colour, we've got it moving. Let's add in a trail. Put the viewer on there. So let's see what happens when we make this 20. As you can see, it's a lot longer. Let's make it 100. There we go. Goes all the way around. This is what we want. So, seeing as it's just being created from the start, we'll go with 200. And you can experiment with the trail increment as well. Let's make that 5 for now. What this will do is break it up a lot more. So if you've got 1, it's a lot smoother. If you've got 10, it's a lot more broken up, and you can see the increments. So it depends what look you're going for. I like somewhere in between. Something like that. And let's deal with the point size of these particles, because at the moment this is what the particles look like in the render. So what we want to do is, let's render it so you can see. So what we want to do is add in an attribute wrangle. Plop that in there. And then we can do this bit of coding. So at pscale equals 0.1 semicolon. Always got to finish it with a semicolon. So that's made it bigger, so we want, let's try 0.01. Getting there. 0.05 maybe. Keep doing that. So that's much more like the pixels that we saw at the beginning as opposed to actual points. So that's a lot better. Stop that render. Cool. And then we can add in a null. Press C. And we will call this magic out. And then that's the magic done for now. Okay, so the next step, let's generate some particles coming from this character. We've just done the easier bit, this is the harder bit. So let's go into here, let's create another pop network, put that down, let's go back to frame 1. And we need to bring this character in as an emitter. So let's just do an object merge, and we're just going to grab the main body geo from the FBX, because it doesn't need to be too detailed because it's just a reference for the particles. So we'll grab that. That's probably massive, yeah. So that's what we've got. We will transform, scale it down the same as the other one, 0.015. There we go. And let's do another null. I should have it here, yeah. And we'll call this the same, we'll call it emitter out. Plug that in and plug that in. Boom. Okay, so the reason this is happening is because this has a material on it. Okay, so we want to do an attribute delete, but we don't want it there. We want it here. And then we've got that. So then we choose that. And you can see there's no longer those big black squares. Cool. So let's go in here. And there you go. So they're constantly being generated from this character, as you can see. Okay, so like before, we need to do something with these particles. So let's delete that again. And instead of the impulse activation, now we want to do the constant activation. So we want this setup basically. Put that on 1, so it's doing that. Might as well put that to 0. And we'll do 5,000 particles each frame. So that's what that looks like. And we'll set the life expectancy to 1 this time, because we want them to spawn, fly off, and then die pretty quickly. So, and we'll do a life variance of 0.5 just to give some variation. And that's what that looks like. So you can see that they're disappearing, but because it's constant, they're constantly being generated. Next, we want to add movement. We want to get them moving away from the body. So, set initial velocity in the attributes tab, and we'll go with 111. And that's just flying off in all sorts of crazy directions. So that's the next step. What we also want to do is make these particles controlled by the velocity of the animation we already have. So we put this back to inherited velocity, and we need to calculate the velocity when this character moves. So let's move these down. And if we put in a trail node, then we can change. So this is usually used to make multiple, as we did here, make multiple increments of something. However, this time we want to compute velocity. There we go. to go back into here, and if you toggle this one on, you can see the direction they are going. And when you move the arm, you can see they're flying off based on that movement, based on that velocity. Obviously this is a bit crazy at the moment. So the next step that we want to do is, if we toggle on the normals again, we want to put down a normal node, pop that in there, and we want to add it to the points themselves. You can see they've slightly shifted. Next, we want to break up the surface a bit. We don't want it to be emitting equally across the entire area of the character. We need to add a bit of noise. So let's drop in an attribute VOP. Put that in there. And if we go into here, this is what you automatically get. And we want, let's turn this off for now. We want to create a noise. So the best way to do this is using an anti-alias flow noise. Not just the noise, we want the flow noise. Put that in there. And let's plug it in. So P into position and noise into CD. Then if we go back up to this level, go in here, and then in here, source, and in here we type capital C D. You can see that the particles have changed colour here. This is the noise. Let's try and view this a bit better. So let's visualize this noise. If we come back out of here, and we turn this off, I left that on by accident. Go back into here, let's put the display flag on there. Can you see that there's now a grayscale pattern over this? So this means that the particles are generating from these whiter areas, which is why you get the noise pattern that we want. Okay, so we've got the noise, but we want to see it actually moving around this character. So we want to go back into here and disconnect this. So hold Y and the little scissors will appear, and then you can just cut the connection. Go into here and change this to 4D 1D. And the signifier that it's worked is these will go bright green. So then you want to add in, type in vector 4, there we go. Vector to vector 4, and plug this in. Let's give it a bit more space. So P into vec, and then we're bringing in the time as well. So time into F val 4, and then this one into P. And then we should see it moving around over time, obviously really fast. Let's get rid of that magic for now. So yeah, now we've got it moving over time. The next thing we want to do is be able to control how fast it's going. So let's add in a multiply and a parameter. And we want to put that one in there. There we go. And then plug in the parameter into input 2. And then here we can name this time scale. And then this is what will show up as something to alter. This is the label. So we'll just put time scale again. So it was moving crazy fast, and I realised that's because this is connected to V, not P. So we'll put that P. And also this N needs to be connected to N over here. So now if we go up to here, put this at 1, this is the normal speed it goes. If we want to slow it down, we can do half speed. And if we want to speed it up, let's do double. So it depends what kind of magic effect you're looking for. If you want more erratic, sparky magic, then obviously go for faster. If you want slower, calmer, then go for slower. So now the particles are moving, are being emitted from those white points, and those white points are moving around the mesh in the noise pattern. Let's increase the points so we can see that better as well. So go into birth, let's give it 50,000. See what that does. Let's come out of there. So they're being emitted from those different points all around the body. The particles are moving at the same speed away from the body, so it's got velocity of the movement, but what we want to do is add a bit more variation in the speed that they're coming out. So we want to add in another multiply onto this normal line. Let's reset this. And then plug in this, the noise, into input 2. And this just gives a bit of variation into the amount they're coming out. Cool. So currently we've got the particles coming out in the same direction, but let's get them coming out in different directions now. So we want to take this and copy and paste. Move these two over. And let's visualize the normals. This setup will basically get them coming out in different directions. It will make it look like there's a bit of wind on it. So we'll add in a normalize. Plug that in and plug this into an add. Into the second input, we'll put this onto the first input. And then this one into the first, and then this one into the second. This one still into the CD. Okay, cool. So that's your setup. And this basically adds some wind, some variation into the directions that the particles are coming out. I think I'm going to change up the start bit because this bit here is a bit confusing to see. So let's clean up this start bit. An easy way to do this is to go into here, and we can actually animate this constant activation. So where does it step back until? So if you've got any animation on your character that you don't want particles to be generated from, I'd say about 100. We'll Alt left mouse button, and then just a frame before that, we'll make that 0. And then this should mean that no particles are spawning until frame 100. Perfect. There we go. Let's make that a smoother transition. Let's animate that growing. So let's do 10,000 particles here. Not there. Do 10,000 particles initially. And obviously this all depends on your scene. And then let's keep it for a second. And then after another second, we'll increase it to 50,000. So goes down, less particles, and then an increase as she's doing the magic thing. Cool. So that's the first bit cleaned up. I have remembered that we need to go back into here and change this to 3D noise. And also let's connect this to the velocity as well. There we go, that's much calmer. Let's get this to 100 so we don't keep seeing the first frames. So now we've got this, as opposed to this, which if you like you can keep, but let's do that. And let's save the scene. So now that we've got our basic effect, let's think about rendering. So this is what we've got. Cool. Let's visualize these as pixels now, because we have enough. So if we just do the render, and we'll see how it looks. We'll see how it looks as of now. Don't forget we've got the magic as well. We'll get rid of that one and create a new mantra node. Let's up these now. And let's just see how that looks. Actually, we'll put those back down because we don't need that yet. So as you can see, these points are massive. So what we want to do is scale them down. So let's create a point VOP and plug that in here. And then if we get a bind export and a parameter, plug A and B, we'll call this overall scale, and we'll put the same in here. So that when we come out of here, we can now change the size. So let's render again. Okay, so make sure you've got P scale in here, because that is the particle scale. And then actually put your display flag on there. Now they've changed. So let's try smaller. Let's try smaller. Maybe a little bigger. Okay, we'll work with that. Stop that render, come back out. Cool. So let's put in a null. plug it in, and we'll call this, we'll go char part for character particles and out. Okay, so this is what we've got so far. Now I'm actually going to remove the colour of this because we will colour it in post afterwards. So let's just not undo that. Let's just bypass that one. And this is what we've got so far. So all that's left to do is cache and render. I'm actually going to make this white instead, so we do have a bit of brightness with the output. And so this is what we've got come out here. Okay, so let's cache out both of these. Tab, File, Cache, there it is. And point it to the right space. And we'll call this magic.filecache1. Version 1, cool. And we will save to disk. Cool, so that has cached that one. So let's do the same in here. We'll file cache. And this will speed up renders basically. And we'll call this charpart.file cache file cache1. Cool. And let's render that one. Cache that one. Okay. And the way we can check these are both cached properly and won't slow down any renders is let's just bring in a geo. Go in there. File. Put that one there. Copy and paste. And then select your caches. And then drop down a merge node into here. Perfect. Make sure those are turned off, and as you can see, we have it cached. So I should be able to go to there, go to there, and it won't need to calculate all the particles before. Cool, so now all we need to do is render it out. So let's go into here, we'll choose where copy and paste this bit because this is important coding, and we'll choose where we want it to go. So I'll just make a new folder, call it render, and we'll call it magic effect. And copy and paste the coding, which is $os.$f4.exr. That just makes sure you've got all the frames written as an EXR output. So I'll accept that, that's where that's going. Rendering, we'll put up to 6 and 6. Then objects, got all the objects that we want and all the lights that we need. It's just the scene. What you can do is, if you only wanted to render certain objects in your scene, is you can delete that star, go into here and choose your objects, so magic or thingy or both. So that's if you wanted to do different render passes, and you can matte objects in front of them and block it out, etc. But we don't need that because that's all we've got in our scene. So we'll do that, and render frame range, and then you're ready to go. One quick note before you render is you can check if you are going to do various objects and matting things out and using certain lights. You can check that you've got what you want if you obviously choose whichever mantra node you're using, render it, and then if you go down here, sometimes this isn't visible, so it's just this little arrow. And you can double check that it's in your scene and you choose the alpha channel. So now we know that this is what we're going to get in the image. Sometimes it's something has broken along the way and it shows up here, but you go on the alpha and nothing's there. So you just want to always make sure that you're seeing what you expect to see. Okay, so we've opened up After Effects and we've brought in our renders. I've done the magic and the character separately, but you can do either. So just double check it's at the right frame rate, 25. Interpret footage, main 25, cool. And then just drag and drop them into your scene. There we go. Very faint, but you can see. So, how do we make it look a lot better? Let's get rid of that. Let's go to the effects and presets, down to color correction. And let's get some brightness and contrast in. Let's deal with the magic first. And move it to a frame where we can see. There we go. So at frame 100, obviously because we changed it so that it wouldn't emit until it stepped back, so we might as well shorten that work area. So that's our particles. Turn the brightness up all the way. And just experiment with this. We've got tint down here as well. So you can choose your colour. We set these as white, so just go onto the white. Let's go with the pink. As you can see, they're pink. Let's layer up the brightness as well. Seeing as it's quite faint, it's not working like that. Just grab another one. There we go. And we could even add in a glow. Seeing as this is magic, yep, that's worked nicely. So you can experiment with the intensity. Let's zoom in a bit. Threshold, let's go for around there. It's not making too much difference, so I'll just leave it there. Cool, so we've got that. Let's do the same for the character particles. Add in a glow, add in brightness and contrast, and we'll add in a tint. In fact, let's get rid of all of those. Let's just copy and paste Control C, Control V. There we go. So that's exactly the same. But if you have done different renders, you can change this a bit. You can lower the glow. You can treat them as different. We could even make them slightly different colours. Let's make it a little bit closer to pink. And we've got a sort of blend there, which looks quite cool. Oh. And if you felt that it wasn't bright enough in your scene, let's just fit this. There we go. If you found that it wasn't bright enough in your scene, you can always copy and paste the layer, layer it up until you get what you want. And yeah, then you've got your magic effect. And obviously you can also bring in the character from before. Double check, is that the right frame? Yep, I've set that to automatically be 25, so that's all good. And then, as you can see, the character has come in now. We need to put that behind, I think. There we go. And let's do brightness. She's a bit dark. There we go. Let's play that through. Okay, and here's what it looks like. Then obviously we can just save this. Let's call it magic effect comp. And let's send it over to Media Encoder. Okay, so this is what this looks like, all rendered out and comped and encoded. I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial and you do some cool effects with it. And thank you for watching.